Welcome to G Fun Facts Online. Today we're talking about an artist who famously declared, "I paint my own reality." She transformed a life of intense physical and emotional pain into a vibrant, unflinching body of work that continues to captivate the world. Her self-portraits have not only made her a global icon, but have also shattered auction records, with one selling for nearly $55 million. While her life was once seen as a footnote to her famous husband, muralist Diego Rivera, today her legacy has completely eclipsed his. We're talking, of course, about the one and only Frida Kahlo. Born Magdalena Carmen Frida Kahlo y Calderón on July 6, 1907, in Coyoacán, Mexico City, Kahlo's life was a battle from the start. At just 6 years old, she contracted polio, a disease that left her with a permanent limp and a right leg that was thinner than her left. She would later disguise this with her long, traditional skirts. But this early hardship was just a prelude. At 18, her life changed forever. The bus she was riding in collided violently with a streetcar. The accident was horrific. A steel handrail impaled her through the hip, fracturing her spine and pelvis. Her collarbone, ribs, and leg were broken. Her foot was crushed. The injuries were so severe that doctors doubted she would survive, let alone walk again. She would endure over 30 surgeries throughout her life, living in a state of chronic pain. This agony, however, became the grim catalyst for her art. Confined to her bed for months, wrapped in plaster corsets, her mother had a special easel made that she could use while lying down. A mirror was installed on the canopy of her bed. With nothing else to look at, she became her own primary subject. She later explained it simply: "I paint myself because I am so often alone, and because I am the subject I know best." This period of intense, isolated introspection gave birth to the art form she would master. Out of the 143 paintings she created in her lifetime, 55 of them are self-portraits. Each one is a raw, symbolic journey into her physical and psychological landscape. Just as pain defined her body, a tumultuous love affair defined much of her emotional life. That love was for the celebrated and larger-than-life muralist, Diego Rivera. They met, married in 1929, divorced in 1939, and then, in a twist that speaks volumes about their connection, remarried just a year later. Their relationship was a whirlwind of passion, mutual admiration, and gut-wrenching betrayals. Both were unfaithful, but Rivera's affair with Frida's own younger sister Cristina was a blow that wounded her deeply. This constant emotional turmoil wasn't hidden away. It was poured directly onto her canvases. Her art became a confessional, grappling with love, heartbreak, jealousy, and her struggle to maintain her own identity while married to one of the most famous men in Mexico. This brings us to the language of her paintings. Frida Kahlo's work is a visual diary filled with a dense and personal symbolism that drew from Mexican folk art, pre-Columbian mythology, and her own lived experience. The art world, particularly the French surrealist André Breton, tried to claim her as one of their own, but Kahlo firmly rejected the label. "They thought I was a surrealist," she said, "but I wasn't. I never painted dreams. I painted my own reality." Let's decode some of her most famous works to understand what she meant. Take The Broken Column, painted in 1944. Here, she presents herself nearly naked in a barren landscape. Her torso is split open, and where her spine should be, we see a crumbling, shattered ionic column on the verge of collapse. Dozens of nails pierce her skin, symbols of the constant, sharp pains she felt. She wears a steel surgical brace, a device she was all too familiar with. Her face, however, is stoic, with tears streaming down her cheeks. It's a brutal, honest depiction of her physical suffering, showing a body that is broken, but not defeated. Then there's one of her most recognized masterpieces, The Two Fridas, from 1939. She painted this massive double self-portrait right after her divorce from Rivera. On the right, we see the Frida whom Diego loved, dressed in a traditional Tehuana costume. Her heart is exposed but whole, and in her hand, she holds a tiny portrait of Rivera as a child. On the left sits the Frida that Diego abandoned. She's in a prim, European-style Victorian dress. Her heart is also exposed, but it's torn open and bleeding. She holds a pair of surgical scissors, attempting to sever the artery that connects her to her other self, but it's no use. She is bleeding out onto her white dress. The two Fridas hold hands, a symbol of self-reliance and the duality of her identity, her German-European heritage on one side, and her beloved Mexican heritage on the other, all under a stormy, turbulent sky. Let's look at Self-Portrait with Thorn Necklace and Hummingbird from 1940. Kahlo stares directly at us, her gaze confident and challenging. Around her neck is a necklace made of thorns, which digs into her skin and draws blood. It's a clear allusion to Christ's crown of thorns, casting herself as a martyr to her own suffering. Hanging from the center of the necklace is a dead hummingbird. In Mexican folklore, hummingbirds are symbols of good luck and love. Here, it's lifeless, a poignant symbol of her own heartbreak after the divorce. On her shoulders sit two animals. On her right, a black cat, a traditional omen of bad luck, seems ready to pounce on the dead bird. On her left, a spider monkey, a gift from Rivera, gently holds the thorn necklace. Monkeys in her work often represent protection, but also lust and sin, symbolizing the complex and often destructive nature of her relationship with Diego. Finally, the wounded deer from 1946. In this surreal painting, Kahlo portrays her own head on the body of a young deer, which has been struck by 9 arrows. The deer runs through a forest, bleeding, but her face remains serene, almost defiant. She painted this after a disappointing spinal surgery in New York that she had hoped would cure her pain, but instead left her worse off. It's a powerful metaphor for her feeling of being hunted and perpetually wounded by fate, yet still carrying on. The imagery also draws a parallel to the Christian story of Saint Sebastian, another martyr pierced by arrows. For years after her death in 1954, Frida was respected, but her fame was largely limited to Mexico and the art world, often seen through the lens of her marriage to Rivera. That all changed in the 1970s. The burgeoning feminist movement saw in Frida an icon of female creativity, sexual liberation, and resilience against suffering. They rediscovered her, and what followed was a cultural phenomenon that has been dubbed Frida Mania. Her face, with its iconic unibrow and intense gaze, is now one of the most recognizable in the world, appearing on everything from tote bags and t-shirts to murals in museums. This global adoration has, unsurprisingly, sent the value of her work into the stratosphere. Her paintings, most of which are national treasures in Mexico and cannot be sold, are incredibly rare on the open market. When one does appear, it causes a frenzy. In 2021, this was proven when her 1949 self-portrait, Diego and I, went up for auction. The painting is a devastatingly intimate look at her anguish over Rivera's latest affair, this time with her friend, the actress Maria Felix. In it, Frida's eyes are filled with tears. Imprinted on her forehead is a small portrait of Diego, complete with a third eye, symbolizing his obsessive, inescapable presence in her mind. Her own long hair is wrapped around her neck, not as an adornment, but as if it's strangling her. That small, powerful painting sold for a staggering $34.9 million, shattering the auction record for any work by a Latin American artist. But that record wasn't to be her last. In a landmark sale, her 1940 self-portrait, El Sueño or The Dream, sold for an astounding $54.7 million. This sale didn't just break her own record, it broke the auction record for a work by any female artist, a title once held by Georgia O'Keeffe. The painting is a haunting meditation on life and death. It shows Frida asleep in a bed that seems to be floating on a bed of clouds. Above her, lying on the bed's canopy, is a skeleton figure, a classic Mexican calavera wired with dynamite. It's a spectral, dreamlike image, exploring the thin veil between sleep, dreams, and death. To think that this same painting sold for a fraction of that in 1980 shows just how profoundly the world's appreciation for Kahlo's genius has grown. But Frida Kahlo's legacy is so much bigger than auction prices. She has become a multifaceted symbol for powerful social and cultural movements. First, as a feminist icon, her unapologetic, raw depictions of the female experience, from miscarriage and abortion to the raw pain of heartbreak, were revolutionary. In an era when women were supposed to be beautiful and silent muses, she painted her reality. She challenged conventional beauty standards by proudly accentuating her unibrow and faint mustache. She was the artist, the subject, and the master of her own image, refusing to be a passive object for the male gaze. She is also celebrated as an LGBTQ+ trailblazer. Kahlo was openly bisexual and defied rigid gender roles. She would often crop her hair short and wear men's suits, projecting an image of androgynous power and independence. Her life and her art are a powerful statement of sexual fluidity and self-acceptance, decades ahead of her time. Furthermore, she is a profound symbol of Mexican identity, or Mexicanidad. In the wake of the Mexican Revolution, the country was forging a new national identity, and Frida was at the forefront of this cultural movement. She eschewed European fashions in favor of traditional, indigenous Tijuana dresses. This wasn't just a style choice. It was a political statement, celebrating the matriarchal culture of the Tehuantepec region and her own mestiza heritage. Her paintings are saturated with the symbols, colors, and spirituality of Mexican folklore and pre-Columbian mythology. Her influence continues to ripple through contemporary art and fashion. Artists today who explore the body, identity, and the female experience are following a path she forged. And designers from Jean-Paul Gaultier to Valentino have drawn direct inspiration from her vibrant, unapologetic personal style. In the end, Frida Kahlo's greatest masterpiece may have been her own life. She took the broken pieces of her existence, a body racked with pain, a heart shattered by love, and a spirit that refused to be crushed, and assembled them into a legacy of breathtaking courage and creativity. Her unflinching gaze, captured in over 50 self-portraits, continues to challenge and inspire us, a timeless reminder of the power of art to transform suffering into something beautiful and enduring. As she herself once said, a testament to her entire existence. At the end of the day, we can endure much more than we think we can.